In the 1950s, the world was divided by ideology, fear, and the shadow of nuclear war. On one side stood the United States and its allies, confident in their technological superiority, industrial power, and growing dominance of the skies. On the other side, the Soviet Union, secretive, relentless, and obsessed with catching up at any cost. Air power was everything. The lessons of World War II were clear. Whoever controlled the skies controlled the battlefield. Jet fighters had replaced propeller aircraft almost overnight, and a new arms race had begun. Faster speeds, higher altitudes, more advanced radar, more missiles. In Washington, confidence was high. American engineers believed the future of air combat belonged to complex, multi-role aircraft packed with cutting-edge electronics. Bigger radar, longer range, heavy missile loads. Speed and technology would decide everything. Across the Iron Curtain, Soviet designers saw the problem very differently. A different philosophy. The Soviet Union did not want elegance. It wanted numbers. Soviet military planners assumed that any future war against NATO would be massive, brutal, and fast. Airfields would be bombed. Infrastructure would collapse. Pilots would die in large numbers. So Soviet aircraft had to meet very specific requirements. Cheap to build, easy to maintain, simple to fly, capable of operating from rough, damaged runways. From this philosophy emerged a fighter that would become one of the most produced jet aircraft in history, the MiG-21. At first glance, it looked unimpressive. Small, light, minimalist. Its delta wing design was compact and brutal in appearance. There was no luxury, no redundancy for comfort. Everything that did not directly contribute to speed or combat performance was stripped away. To Western analysts, it looked primitive. NATO's laughter. When NATO intelligence first identified the MiG-21, assigning it the code name Fishbed, reactions ranged from curiosity to outright contempt. Compared to American fighters like the F-4 Phantom II, the MiG-21 appeared laughably basic. It had limited radar, short range, poor pilot visibility, crude avionics. Western analysts believed air combat had evolved beyond dogfighting. Missiles would decide battles at long range. Radar-guided weapons would eliminate the need for close combat entirely. The MiG-21 seemed like a relic, a cheap interceptor built for a doctrine that no longer mattered. The United States was convinced it had already won the future of air combat. That belief would soon be shattered. The plane designed for war, not prestige. The MiG-21 was not built to impress analysts. It was built to kill bombers and survive chaos. Capable of exceeding Mach 2, the MiG-21 was one of the fastest fighters of its generation. Its delta wings allowed it to climb rapidly and maintain high speed with remarkable efficiency. It carried a mix of short-range infrared missiles, cannons for close combat. It could be flown by pilots with relatively limited training compared to Western standards. Most importantly, it could be produced in massive numbers. Factories across the Soviet bloc churned them out relentlessly. By the end of its production life, over 11,000 MiG-21s would be built, more than any other supersonic jet fighter in history. Still, the West was unimpressed. Confidence turns into arrogance. By the early 1960s, American doctrine had evolved around a dangerous assumption. Dogfighting was obsolete. The F-4 Phantom II was a perfect symbol of this belief. It was powerful, fast, heavily armed, and packed with advanced radar systems. Early versions didn't even carry an internal cannon. Why would they need one? Missiles would kill the enemy before pilots ever saw each other. Training reflected this mindset. American pilots focused on missile engagement, radar operation, and formation flying, not close-range maneuvering. Against a primitive aircraft like the MiG-21, victory seemed guaranteed. Then came Vietnam. Reality arrives at Mach speed. When American forces entered the Vietnam War, few expected aerial combat to be a serious challenge. The Vietnamese Air Force was small. Its pilots were outnumbered. Its aircraft were mostly Soviet-supplied MiG-17s and MiG-21s. On paper, it was no contest. In the sky, it was a disaster. North Vietnamese pilots did not fight like Americans expected. They avoided long engagements. They did not play by NATO rules. They used ground-controlled interception, radar guidance from the ground, and surprise attacks. MiG-21s would climb rapidly, strike from unexpected angles, fire missiles at close range, disengage immediately. They refused to fight fair. And the F-4 Phantom struggled. The shocking numbers. As the war progressed, something alarming became impossible to ignore. The kill ratios were wrong. In World War II, American pilots achieved ratios as high as 10-1 against enemy aircraft. In Vietnam, those numbers collapsed. Against MiG-21s, the ratio dropped to near parity, and sometimes worse. Heavy, fast, missile-dependent fighters were being outmaneuvered by a small, agile aircraft the West had mocked. Pilots reported that once a fight turned into a close-range engagement, the MiG-21 became deadly. It could turn tighter, accelerate faster, disappear into cloud cover. American technology had failed to deliver easy victory. The laughter stopped. A growing obsession. By the mid-1960s, U.S. intelligence faced a terrifying truth. They did not truly understand the MiG-21. They had never flown one. They had never fought one under controlled conditions. They were guessing, and guessing was costing lives. To defeat the MiG-21, the West needed to study it from the inside. That opportunity would come from an unlikely source, and one of the boldest intelligence operations of the Cold War.
Operation Diamond, stealing the enemy's secret weapon. By 1966, the United States and its allies were fighting a war they did not fully understand. They knew the MiG-21 was dangerous. They knew it was agile, fast, and deadly at close range. But they did not know why it performed the way it did, or how to consistently defeat it. Intelligence reports were fragmented. Combat data was incomplete. Every engagement produced more questions than answers. To truly understand the MiG-21, the West needed more than radar tracks and pilot testimonies. They needed the aircraft itself, an unlikely opportunity. Thousands of kilometers away from Vietnam, in the Middle East, an unexpected opportunity was quietly taking shape. The Iraqi Air Force had recently received MiG-21s from the Soviet Union. Among its pilots was a man named Munir Redfa, a Christian in a Muslim-majority military, increasingly alienated from his superiors. Redfa was experienced, disciplined, and deeply unhappy. He felt marginalized. He believed his career was blocked, and he feared for his family's safety. Israeli intelligence noticed. Mossad's calculation. Israel had been watching the MiG-21 closely. Surrounded by hostile neighbors flying Soviet aircraft, Israel understood the stakes better than anyone. If war came, and it almost certainly would, the MiG-21 would dominate the skies unless its weaknesses were exposed. The Israeli intelligence agency, Mossad, began a bold operation. They did not seek to steal documents. They sought to steal the plane. Recruiting the pilot, Mossad agents approached Redfa carefully over months. They appealed not to ideology, but to survival. They offered a new life, financial security, protection for his family. The risk was enormous. If discovered, Redfa would be executed. His family would suffer the consequences. Mossad agents would disappear. Yet Redfa agreed. The operation was given a code name, Operation Diamond. The flight that should not have happened. On August 16, 1966, Redfa took off from Iraq in his MiG-21 on what appeared to be a routine training mission. Instead of following his flight plan, he turned west. Flying low to avoid radar, conserving fuel to the extreme, Redfa crossed into Israeli airspace with almost nothing left in his tanks. Israeli fighters scrambled, not to intercept, but to escort. Moments later, Redfa landed safely at Hatzor Air Base. For the first time, a fully intact MiG-21 had fallen into Western hands. Shockwaves across the world. The implications were enormous. Israel immediately tested the aircraft, flying it against its own fighters. The results were astonishing. The MiG-21 was faster in acceleration, deadly in close turns, extremely dangerous below medium altitude. But it also had critical flaws: poor rearward visibility, limited fuel endurance, rapid loss of energy in prolonged maneuvers. For the first time, the myth was broken. Sharing the prize. Israel understood that the value of the MiG-21 extended beyond its borders. Quietly, discreetly, the aircraft was transferred to the United States. Its destination was a place officially denied to exist. Area 51. Project Have Donut. Under extreme secrecy, the U.S. Air Force launch project Have Donut. American test pilots flew the MiG-21 repeatedly, pushing it to its limits. They fought mock dogfights against F-4 Phantoms and other American aircraft. The results confirmed what Vietnam had hinted at. At low speeds and tight turns, the MiG-21 was superior. American pilots were shocked, but now they finally understood how to beat it. Knowledge changes everything. The MiG-21 was no longer a mystery. It was a machine with strengths and weaknesses, and that knowledge would soon reshape American air combat forever.